A warm welcome to the Evolution Show. I'm Johan Landgren. I hope you're great. If you're new to the channel, I'm a writer and investor in sustainable energy. And the Evolution Show is all about inspiring conversations in smart energy solutions, AI, and sustainable living. And today I will dig into something few know about, but that is about to revolutionize medicine. Today I will share some of my experience with stem cell treatments using what's called mesenchymal stem cells. And I'm joined by Josh Ketner, the founder of Body Clinic and one of the world leaders in stem cell therapy. Did you know that your knee can be healed and cartilage be regenerated using stem cells? And that the same type of stem cells in fact can help heal numerous heart injuries, organ injuries and diseases using your own immune system. The recovery and healing for many of the patients with stem cell therapy can be mind-blowing, but I know from me and my family's own experience that it's real. So you definitely don't want to miss this episode. And stay tuned for part 2 next week when I talk with Josh Ketner about cutting-edge stem cell therapies they are working on and the future for stem cell treatments that may change preventive medicine as well as healing completely. Okay, before you get going, if you want to support the show, don't forget a thumbs up. And take a look at my new Patreon page where you get exclusive access to the technical details behind the energy house I've designed with my father that is quite unique, and it's under construction, and much more. Okay, let's get going. This is the Evolution Show. Welcome to the Evolution Show, Josh Ketner.
Hello, Johan. How are you doing?
I'm fine. You're with me from Mexico. You're the founder of Body Clinic.
Correct.
And you're specializing in stem cells treatments with so-called mesenchymal stem cells.
Yes.
And you have, successfully treated patients with some remarkable recoveries from many different injuries and diseases. And I have a personal interest in stem cells. I've had treatments myself, but I had mine in Panama at the Stem Cell Clinic in Panama. But you have a really interesting approach, and I learned about you in recent years when I looked at alternatives and so on, because in Panama the treatments are quite pricey. And it's really great there, but we were looking at different options and so on. But let's start with your clinic and your background. It's very interesting. You have been treating patients with stem cells in Mexico for how long?
Yeah, so we've had the clinic for 12 years. We didn't start with stem cells, but we've been doing stem cells now for about 8 years, helping patients with the mesenchymal stem cells, correct?
Yeah. And for people unfamiliar with, stem cell treatments and so on, what are the most common conditions people are coming for at your clinic?
Yeah, so we mostly see joints. I'd say knees are number one. A lot of arthritis, ligament, tendon type issues. Then lower backs, a lot of back pain out there. And then we see a lot of chronic degenerative issues such as organ failure, heart failure, kidney failure, liver cirrhosis, things like that. And then we see a lot of autoimmune diseases. And on top of that, like a lot of people will use these for anti-aging purposes too. So they have a pretty wide span of what they can do. Basically help you heal like when you're a little kid.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the different treatments span from, as you said, almost everything. And for people, I think it's hard to imagine that, stem cells can do all this stuff. But you're very transparent. You have a YouTube channel. You're interviewing your patients, and they're telling their own stories. What happened. What the conditions were before and after your treatments, and you do follow-ups, obviously, and so on. So and you have also, you have stem cell therapy yourself. So perhaps you can start with you. Just tell a little bit how your treatment has been with the stem cells.
For me, I was patient number one. I don't offer anything I wouldn't do myself. So my knees have always hurt me. I'm pretty tall, I'm like 6'3", and knee problems just run in the family. So this is about 8 years ago, so I was like 33, and my knees hurt. And so we did my left knee. We didn't do any scans, anything like we should have. We were just starting, wanted to see what they could do. Did the left knee, and about a month and a half later, my right knee was just hurting super bad. And that's because I'd gotten so used to the pain of both hurting that you just kind of learned to tough it out. You could ignore it. But now when I could feel the difference because my left knee was feeling better, I had to go get an MRI and see what was going on. Turned out I had multiple meniscus tears, a partially torn ACL. It was way worse than I thought it was. And we did treatment. So took it real easy, didn't work out, didn't do anything for about 2 months, let it heal, just did upper body exercises. And by about 2.5 months, it was feeling great, and it's felt great ever since. I did a follow-up MRI 9 months after, and sure enough, full regeneration, completely healed it. And I've got those before and after MRIs on our treatment page on the website. Then I did my wrist. I had gotten kind of lazy doing bench press, like let my wrist go back, and it was hurting all through here. So we did the stem cells into the wrist, more of a kind of carpal tunnel type ligament issue going on there. And that one took a bit longer. That one took about 5 months to heal. And we usually see that time frame, 3 to 6 months for most treatments for peak results. I've had sciatica in my lower back. That was 3.5 years ago. I've had neck pain I've had to fix 2 years ago. A year and a half ago, I had a 50% tear of my tricep tendon from a dirt bike accident. We've got before and after MRIs of that, complete regeneration. So I've done a lot of treatments. I also do the IVs and the stem cell facial treatment, sort of an anti-aging protocol. I do more than most people would. I do an IV of about 100 million stem cells every 6 months. Most people will do it maybe once a year or less frequent. But, you know, if I look the same in 10 years, I figure that there's no better marketing than that. So that's kind of the goal.
No. Yeah, and you have the opportunity, of course, you know, so I probably would do the same if I were in your shoes. But so, I mean, I reached out to you, as I mentioned. I had stem cell therapy myself, but also my father and my father's wife, and we have all different results. In particular, my father, he had the most, I mean, remarkable results, I would say. I mean, he had... yeah, we'll come back to that, but it's one of the main reasons I reached out to you, because I think people should learn about this. I think you're doing pioneering stuff, and even if you ask a doctor today, if you go to a doctor and you mention this, and you know, I know you know all about this, and you mention stem cell therapy, they're like, what's that, you know, and they question it, obviously, most of the people, but I think mainly it's about ignorance. I think they don't even know that cartilage, as you mentioned, can be regenerated. It's just until recently that, you know, medicine has looked into this, and in particular, like you're talking about, stem cells can actually do this. And you have proof for this. You can talk about that. You have MRIs showing this, right?
Correct. Yeah, we like, it's tough to get people to go back in the machine. You know, it's not the most fun experience to get an MRI. It takes about 45 minutes per joint, a lot of loud noises. But when we can, we've got our own MRI machine here on site, so we can do follow-up, and people that come back can scan it again, or they can do it back home. It's become very difficult in places like the United States to even get an MRI. And I really think it's because it's just such a culture of lawsuits up there and malpractice with doctors that they don't really want a before MRI, because if the patient has any complications in surgery, anything goes wrong, and they do a follow-up MRI, it's like an open and shut case. Like, they're going to win no matter what, and it inhibits doctors from really doing their job. So it's become quite the problem. So they'll do like an X-ray, and you can't see soft tissue with an X-ray, so they're totally guessing. Like, we don't cut corners, we don't guess, we won't do any joint treatment without an MRI. We want to see all the soft tissue, and that way people have something to compare to in the future too. So we try to go over the top. We know we're in Mexico. People sometimes have a bad perception here, but medicine is so far ahead of like the United States here. It's crazy because they don't have all the extra rules and regulations. And I mean, there's still those things in place. They're just not as crazy with it here, which is nice. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just let's get into it. I mean,
I mean, stem cells, what are they? People don't know it. Can you tell us what stem cells do in your bodies and how they help us heal?
Yeah, so a mesenchymal stem cell, think of it like the manager on the construction site. It's not a stem cell like you think. These will not turn into different types of tissue. They're not going to magically heal things. So it was Dr. Arnold Kaplan discovered them in the early 90s. He named them. He's a professor at Case Western University. I've worked with him in the past, been to lots of conferences with him. And what he found was you have these things in your body that live on your capillaries, and they're called pericytes. So imagine my arm's a capillary. They're wrapped around like there's some sort of like octopus looking thing there. And when you're injured, they come off, they go to the area, and they guide the repair and regeneration. So those pericytes are the mesenchymal stem cells. And again, they're like the manager seeking out inflammation. And when they find problems, they'll then start sending out these different signals. They were originally called extracellular vesicles. Now they're calling them exosomes. But these are the delivery devices for what they send out. They're like cytokines, signaling proteins, chemokines or chemical signals, trophic factors. These will guide neurons for regeneration of nerves. So they're guiding that. They're helping to reprogram the immune system. Basically, it's like hitting the factory reset button. If they're attacking the body, they'll reprogram them to stop. That's why they're so good for autoimmune diseases and why they're so good for joint health, because the immune system plays a huge role in repairing and regenerating joints. Well, the problem is, as we age, we lose them. By age 18 for women, age 21 for men, we lose 90% of our capillaries because we're not growing taller. We don't need all that extra blood flow. Thus, you lose 90% of your pericytes, which are your mesenchymal stem cells. And now you don't have that ability to heal like you did. Now, when you hurt your knee, white blood cells rush to the area and they can only heal via fibrosis, which is scar tissue. It's a patch-up job and it'll keep it from getting worse, but it's not going to allow it to be healed because your natural growth factors in your blood can't get past it. So with mesenchymal stem cells, we're just concentrating them in bulk, like as if you were a little kid. And the cool part is we don't have to take them from you. We can take them from the youngest, healthiest source, which would be like umbilical cord tissue, because it's only 9 months old. It doesn't have a predisposition to an immune system. It's so young, it's not going to have any of these autoimmune factors that are compromising the mesenchymal stem cells going on. So it can do its job the right way, and we can replicate them the fastest. They lack this thing called human leukocyte antigen, HLA. That's the marker that would tell you it's from your tissue. Like if you needed a kidney transplant and I gave you a kidney, your body would try to reject it forever because we have different HLA. Everyone does. You'd have to take immunosuppressants to keep it. Mesenchymal stem cells don't exhibit that, so they don't get rejected. And in fact, they found that's why they believe women that have had kids live longer on average than women that haven't, because the baby can detect through the umbilical cord, there's a nerve that'll tell them if the mom's hurt, and will actually send over mesenchymal stem cells to help mom. So it's like women pregnant get a free MSC IV, and it's a ton of benefits to it. So it's a natural process. We have to create the scenario in the lab and then put those cells to the right place. So it's super safe, super easy. It's the way you're supposed to heal. And it's, you're not taking a pill for a pill for a pill.
No. And I can say from personal experience, when I had my treatments, the only thing I had, it was the second time I had my treatments, I think it was like 45 minutes after, or 45 minutes after, during, my last treatment, I had some fever. That's it. And then it was, over and everything was normal. And there wasn't any, super fever. I felt a bit uncomfortable and warm for 45 minutes and then it was over. And we can just take that as a follow-up question. You have had stem cell treatments for 8 years. Have you had any serious side effects with your patients so far? No serious side effects. Like you just mentioned, with an IV, the worst case scenario is a mild fever, and that's because you're getting a lot of something new into your system and your immune system flares up, but then it recognizes, hey, this isn't an enemy, it's not an intruder, because the HLA markers aren't there. And so it just stops attacking. You take a Tylenol, and I bet your fever probably went away like within half an hour. I mean, that's what's happened to me 2 times in 8 years. So it's very simple. Yeah, I didn't take anything. I normally don't, so I just let it pass and had some water and rest, and then it was over. But so yeah, that's not nothing people should worry about. on the contrary, I'd say. You mentioned that you have different numbers of mesenchymal stem cells as you age. And I looked at the study that said that when you're at the age of 20, the number of stem cells in your body start, you mentioned it, 18 or 20, they start to decline. And by the age of 40, they have declined with about 30%, and at the age of 60 with about 60%. So my question is, I think you maybe have already answered it, but in general, as we age, we benefit of having to add more mesenchymal stem cells to our body, right?
Oh, for sure. You're just taking it back to numbers like you had when you were younger. Like you just mentioned, I mean, those numbers, 30, 60% less, that's 30 to 60% less of what you had in your early 20s after you've already lost 90%. So it's a huge decline, and you're not going to get that back naturally. These don't reproduce in your system and start like thriving again. Like you hear some of these people telling you these things like, oh, if you just do fasting, or if you do infrared sauna, or if you do these supplements, you're going to, stimulate or regenerate your stem cells naturally. And my first question is always, what kind of stem cell? There's a lot of type of stem cells. And for mesenchymal stem cells, that's not possible. You have a limited number, and they decline with age. So the only way to get those numbers back up is to do something like an IV or put them in a joint or where they're needed. And it was, I think, Dr. Correa at University of Miami, or he used to be there, he had done some studies, and he was kind of Kaplan's right-hand man. And he told me by doing at least 100 million IV, you were, hopefully getting these levels back up to what they were in your early 20s. Because a lot of them will go through the system and eventually find a capillary to call home again. So now you've got more pericytes. That's kind of like having, it'd be having like emergency services at the ready, right? That's kind of how Dr. Kaplan would explain it. It's like those are your medics waiting to go take care of an emergency. So you're restocking those levels. And it's very tough to measure, but that's kind of their guess at this point based on available data, that you can restock those levels up into your early 20s.
And you mentioned, I think you get it from healthy births, right? So you have rigorous, tests and so on for, various diseases and so on. So you don't have to worry about that.
No, there's nothing to worry. There's no blood involved. People ask about that a lot, blood matching. None of that's involved. We take the umbilical cord, you take it to the lab, you start basically chopping it up, putting in centrifuges, spinning it, collagenase and other things to separate the cells from the tissue, shaker tables, you eventually get it to these flasks, and then you're putting it in the incubator. It's almost like baking. You got to make sure you got fresh croissants every day coming out, and that's how it works. So we set different incubators, different temperatures, different CO2 levels, so every day we can have fresh cells coming out. We personally don't use frozen cells in research. They pretty much only use frozen cells, but you kill a lot of cells in the freezing and thawing process. So in our opinion, it's best to get them fresh, always administered within 24 hours of cultivation. The women are heavily screened that donate. They have to be between the ages of 18 and 25, first-time mothers. We ask them like how many sexual partners. If they answer more than one, disqualified. And the reason is because an MSC can't carry a virus. But if the donor had a retrovirus, there's a less than 5% chance that getting carried over. So the most of those are sexually transmitted. We want to lower that. The women are screened, then the tissue's screened, then the isolated cells are screened, then the cultured cells are screened. And we do third-party analysis. We provide everyone. So there's no worries there. We even screen out if they've had any of the COVID vaccines. That's a big concern for a lot of our patients. They don't want that in there. And luckily here in Mexico, there was a federal database that if you got any jab, you were registered to. So we ask, then verify, and I think we're the only clinic out there doing that. So we just want to make sure the healthiest, best cells so that you can heal.
Yeah, and I can just, come back to what I mentioned earlier, that I had my treatments in Panama, and I had it for a leg injury. I was hoping to get a little bit better from that. I got more energy, and just a funny thing, I had a blemish from, I've been a beekeeper for 8 years, and I had like a bee sting, and it was an old, not a wound, but a kind of blue blemish thing on one of my toes that didn't go away. I had it for like 2 years, and I thought, okay, that's that. But after my treatment, it just disappeared. it was, I mean, I just, it couldn't be a coincidence, I thought, because it just happened so fast. But my father, he had a really remarkable result. I mean, he had 120 million IV 2 times in 22 and 2023, and he had arterial fibrillation, a trial, I think, I don't know how you pronounce it, but yeah, but it just, but it just disappeared. I mean, the doctors, they said this is, very, I don't know if it's even, I mean, normally it doesn't, it just gets worse, and you have to do these controls, every month and so on. So he's really happy about that. And to be honest, I mean, he was a bit skeptical in the beginning. He didn't think, he was going there, I mean, with an open mind and so let's see what happens. But now when he looks back at this and he says like, yeah, Johan, it's been 3 years and nothing has happened. This has to be the stem cells. There is no, and he's a very logical man, scientific and so on. So that was great. And my father's wife, she had issues with her knees, pain. She had to have an operation first with the left knee, but they were considering doing the right knee as well. And she had to do the operation, but she had pain reliefs at least, and she was happy about that. So, I mean, you should go in with this with an open mind. That's my point. And we all will react differently. But my experience is overall very positive from my family side. So that's why we are, yeah.
Well, and that's why it's so important to do MRIs and know what's going on, because there's things you can't fix. Like if your knee is truly bone on bone, you need some cartilage to build off of. Or if you see like osteophytes, which are new bone growth, they always grow where the cushioning should be. So like the stem cells can't get rid of that. And then for like AFib, I mean, they don't directly fix AFib because that's an electrical issue. But in certain cases, like your dad, because when you do an IV, it goes straight to the heart. First place it goes. So if your heart has any damage or is weak, the cells are so effective that up until about 2012, they thought they were becoming heart cells. I mean, it's been incredible, the results we've seen for like congestive heart failure. We've gotten people that don't need a transplant anymore because of it. And in a case like your dad's, there was probably some sort of damage or something. And by strengthening the heart, it could get back into rhythm and get rid of the AFib. So it didn't even fix the electrical issue. The electrical issue was a result of some sort of damage at the heart, which is clearly now healed. And that's amazing.
Yeah. So we are planning to come to you and with some other family members as well, actually. So we're going to come back to that in a different episode, but that's going to be great. And then I'm going to be very transparent and tell people also, I mean, what happened and so on. But here in Sweden and Europe, as you know, and in the US, the most common source of mesenchymal stem cells, they are derived from abdominal fat or from spinal cord. And all from the same body of from the patient of the body, the patient's body. And these treatments can be helpful, but they draw on your own limited number of stem cells, as we've talked about. So can you explain what's different with stem cells from umbilical cord and placenta that you provide, and the alternatives that are out there?
Yeah, sure. Look, you can get umbilical cord cells in the United States, but the problem is you're not allowed to replicate them. So that's the problem, is that they have to take a whole umbilical cord and placenta, then centrifuge it, and then bottle it, the liquid, which has the cells. But what they don't tell you is only 1/3 of those cells are mesenchymal stem cells. 2/3 are monocytes and other cells. That's why we then have to culture. The first 2 to 3 passages is just isolating pure mesenchymal stem cells. They're not allowed to do that. So first, you're not getting a pure product. Your immune system is going to recognize the HLA markers and kill those other cells. And when they're doing that, a lot of times they kill a lot of those MSCs. So you're getting a few million at best with that. And that's the best case scenario anywhere in the world outside of countries like Mexico or Panama, where you can culture the cells. The other option would be like fat derived. This is a crazy one. My sister-in-law is a doctor. We had her trained in this because we thought about offering both in combo. Not worth it, because you do a liposuction. Usually the patient's awake for this too. And I mean, it's pretty gnarly. They're up there taking fat out, and it leaves you with kind of a weird area where you've got no fat. The other side might. So aesthetically not the most pleasing, painful. And then you don't get a lot of cells because, again, you put in a centrifuge with collagenase, spin it, separate the cells, and maybe 1% or less are actually mesenchymal stem cells. They do the same thing with bone marrow. That one's even worse. They chip into your hip and take them, and that's the worst source because there's no capillaries there. So again, stem cells are pericytes. You want capillary-rich tissue. There's no capillaries. You do have some freebound there. And the majority of those cells are what are called hematopoietic stem cells. Those create red and white blood cells. Well, white blood cells only heal via fibrosis, so you really don't want those. And again, you're in this position where less than 1% are MSCs, but they sell it like a stem cell treatment. But Dr. Kaplan, he would get very mad at these clinics. I saw him yell at a group from Texas once, and he's like, that is not a stem cell therapy, that is a cell therapy. He goes, that's no different than Coca-Cola selling you an apple juice that says all natural, and then you read the back label and it's 99% sugar and water with 1% apple juice from concentrate. Same thing. So that's why you can get results. I mean, but you don't know in that case, was it the stem cells, was it the monocytes? That it's not, you could never scientifically prove the stem cells are what healed an issue with that. And it's just not enough cells that, like, it's highly unlikely you're going to get much results. It's painful. Believe it or not, it typically costs more than like what we do. And it's just, there's no real advantage.
No. And I mean, that was actually one of my questions. I mean, if you compare Panama is a great place and so on, but basically you're paying, you know, this is our public figures, so there's no secrets. I mean, it's about a third of the cost for a general treatment, you know, anti-aging treatment. You're providing 1/3 of the cost compared to them, and you're actually almost double the number of stem cells for one treatment as well. So that's a big difference. And for people just to understand how can you offer this? But if I understand you have, as you mentioned, you have your own lab over there. You have everything in the same facility and so on. So just for people to understand why you are able to offer this at a fair price.
Well,
relative fair price.
It's first because that was our goal from the get-go. My dad had Lou Gehrig's disease. I saw how messed up the system is, and my goal is to make it as affordable as possible. You know, Panama was the first, but that being the first means a lot of cost. It costs millions of dollars to build a lab, to have the facility, to have the employees. I mean, we've got our own hospital now, but we've been in business for 12 years doing stem cells for about 8, and we've invested along the way. We didn't have to have that upfront capital. Dr. Riordan, who founded Panama, did, because no one else was doing it. I mean, he's a pioneer. He started it, amazing guy, but he had to put a lot of money up front. And so his costs initially, he had to have, you know, it'd be like, I think it's, you know, $25,000, $29,000 for 120 million IV, but he got very famous from that Joe Rogan interview with Mel Gibson. He's had Tony Robbins, had some really big name people. I know a lot of celebrities that have gone there, and it's smart from a marketing perspective. I mean, a lot of people believe if it costs the most, it must be the best. It's not the case with this. I mean, he did his PhD under Dr. Kaplan. We've worked with him, and Dr. Kaplan would always say an MSc is an MSc is an MSc. They all work the same way. It becomes more of a numbers game. So we got started, we partnered with the research lab for the University of Guadalajara, able to rent space there, have our biologists in there doing it. That's massively kept costs down. We've since then built a lab here on site. We've built our own hospital. We've got about 43 employees. I mean, it's grown like crazy in 8 years. But we've been able to keep the costs down because we did it that way. We didn't invest the money up front. We've invested it along the way. It was more bootstrapped, and that's how we've been able to do it.
Yeah. There are so many things we could cover here, but I encourage people to check out your homepage, and as well your YouTube channel. I'll provide a link so people can see the different testimonials from the different treatments you provide and the results, because they are really fantastic. And I think we have just scratched the surface of what's the potential for stem cells in the future. And I thought we could talk about that in the part 2 of our conversation. But yeah, so But thank you so much, Josh. This was a great, overview, and I hope people enjoy and get inspired and look into this, because this is real. This is not magic, but it's very, very serious medicine, and you are doing great work at Dream Body Clinic. So thank you for that, Josh.
Yeah, and we'll walk you through the lab when you and your family come, and I'll show you what the future holds. There's some pretty cool stuff, but it'll be even easier to show you in person, and we'll just do it then and film it.
Yeah, look forward to that, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was all for today, folks. I hope you liked the conversation. And I'm curious to know what you think about stem cell therapy. Do you have questions or perhaps your own experience? Please share them below and I will try to answer them. And if you liked my talk today, don't miss the next episode when I talk with Josh Ketner about some of the cutting-edge stem cell therapies they are working on, and the future for stem cell treatments that may change preventive medicine as well as healing completely. And before you go, if you liked the episode, don't forget, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to support the show. And check out my new Patreon link below to become an Evolution Show team member. I hope to see you next time.